Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Manning, financial advisor here in Nashville for Pinnacle Financial Partners, and today is the day. We are open officially for the second draw, or maybe in some cases, for some of you, the first draw of PPP funding. Our system is open and running, and so we are here this morning to just give you an update on what we know. We're here to answer your questions mostly about what you want to know about the program or even potentially Pinnacle's process through the program and just be able to be available to you to walk through this process so that you feel informed and ready for this next round. I'm joined, thankfully, by Lane Rhodes. Lane and her team have spent a lot of time trying to understand all the ins and outs of this round of funding so that we can help make sure that you're ready to apply. Just a couple of housekeeping options for you this morning. If you would please look at the Q&A function to submit your questions to us. Lane's going to give us a quick update on what we know this morning, and then we'll open it up for questions. If you'll use the Q&A function instead of the chat function, that would be helpful to us to be able to see your question and get it answered. There are typically several hundred people that participate in these webinars, so it is a challenge to get everybody's specific question answered, but we'll try to answer those in general groups so that you feel like you've gotten your question answered. If for some reason you don't, it's a great time for us, and we'll continue to plug our website through the entire webinar. pnfp.com/PPP is where we update all of our information. We put some tools out there for you to use. We walk you through the process on how to go through the application, whether this is your first draw or your second draw of PPP funding. So please be sure and stay tuned for that. Also, pay attention to your emails. Your financial advisor and our communications team will continue to send out emails about the program and anything that you might need to continue your application for PPP funding. One quick update that we do know about this morning, if you have made an effort to apply already this morning, we do know there's a bit of a glitch in the system with the ownership calculation. And a quick workaround for that is if you will just input one owner with at least 20% ownership in your application, that's sufficient to move your application through to processing. So there's been a bit of an issue with an error message showing up with the ownership calculation. And so all you need to do is submit your application with one owner of at least 20% ownership, and that'll push the application through the process. So as we learn issues and problems and process updates, we'll be sure that you know about those things. But with that, Lane, I'll turn it over to you to give us an update on where we stand this morning as Pinnacle has opened up our application process for PPP funding.
Thanks, Brian. Good morning. It's great to be here with you today on our first day of PPP second draw. I'd just like to remind everybody as well, if you did not get a PPP loan in the first round, you're also eligible to apply as a first draw applicant as well. So we've got two different processes going on right now. If you did not apply in the first round, so this would be your first time applying for a PPP loan, you need to reach out directly to one of our financial associates here at Pinnacle Bank. They can get you all set up and send you the application to be able to apply for the first round of PPP. If you did apply in the first round and you received it and you're here trying to get a second round, we're trying to make that as easy on you as possible right now. So you would be able to go to our online application, and then your information should just automatically populate into there. So it should be really easy to get a second application input. And so just a few quick reminders on the PPP second round. It doesn't differ that much from the first round program, with the exception of they are really trying to target businesses that are smaller and were harder hit by the pandemic. So this program is for companies with employees of 300 or less. You must have fully used up your first PPP loan before you receive your second PPP loan. So you do not have to have applied for forgiveness. You just need to show that you've used all the money. And then a big change to the program on the second go around is you must show a 25% reduction in gross receipts during any quarter of 2020 compared to one quarter in 2019. So that is an important differentiator between the first draw program and the second draw program. And so that 25% reduction must be shown in order to be eligible for this second round program. Nonprofits are still eligible for PPP first round and second round. And so that's good to remember. We do have some organizations, some chamber organizations that were not available to get the first round. Now they are. So if you're one of those entities, you would actually apply as a first round recipient and not under the second round recipient. So those are just some of the changes to the program. Brian, would love to kind of get into some of the questions or specifics that some of our clients have out there with how they can actually go about applying or qualifying for this program.
Yeah, Lane and Joe Bass from our communications team actually just reminded me one update we got over the weekend that I think is important for us to address this morning is the importance of the data quality that our applicants are submitting. I know in the first round of funding, there was a lot of issue internally having to go back to clients to update information and provide correct data that they didn't do on the first processing of the application. And it's super critical that our clients, when they submit, make sure all the information is completely accurate and to double and triple check it before it gets submitted. Joe just sent me a stat saying last week they had just a 70% approval rate because of bad data that was in the applications. And so it's very important that all the information is accurate and clear as it goes through to prevent any back and forth with the application process. So I think that's a great place for us to start, is to make sure that you have all of your information ready to go. Let's see, Lane, let's just get into the questions. Let's see. So Doug has a question about inclusion of supplier costs that could be included as expenses. How do they go about defining that, and how do they go about supplying that information with their application this time?
So that is a great question. We don't have a ton of detail from SBA and their interim final ruling on what qualifies as a supplier cost. One of the examples that they used in this was if you were a restaurant, you were closed for several weeks or, even a month or so, and then you needed to go order your food supply to be able to be up and running once your restaurant was able to reopen. That food order would be a supplier request to help you restock and get your business going. So I think it's really going to revolve around, if you sell a product or service or inventory, that those supplier costs are going to come into play. If you're a service-based business, I'm not sure you would have as many supplier costs that may fall into this ratio, but that is really where we were. That's where SBA kind of pointed us through their example, was giving perishable items that would have gone bad during COVID. And now that you're back up and running, you have to completely replenish those perishable items. I would also say items that maybe are just out of date at this point in time. If you're a retail shop that you shut down in the spring and now it's winter, so your items are completely different in the winter versus the spring. That would be an instance as well where stocking up on those out of date items that are more current with today's season would fall under that supplier cost. So as long as it's a valid cost for operating your business from a normal supplier, I would include that as an eligible cost. Now, if it's something completely off the wall that you've never had to do before that's not related to PPP, because you also have to remember one of the things you can spend money on in the PPP program is the protection items and equipping your business to be able to operate under the new economic conditions that COVID has given to us. So stocking up on hand sanitizer, masks, rubber gloves, maybe putting in plexiglass to be able to communicate with your clients without having the risk of spreading germs. Those are items that can also be covered under the PPP funds. One thing I think is good to remember here, Brian, though, that only accounts for 40% of the funds, though. In order for for you to be eligible for forgiveness, you must still show that you used at least 60% of the funds on payroll cost before you even get into any of those supplier and other types of expenses.
I think that's helpful. So Lane, I know, I guess we've done several of these webinars already in this round of funding, and one of the popular questions is trying to understand the 25% reduction in revenue and exactly how you go about calculating that, and what are the areas that they can look at on their financials in order to do that. Do you mind talking a little bit more about that 25% reduction in revenue, how they go about documenting that, who needs to document it, and what they needed to provide to us in the application of their PPP funding?
So SBA has not told us what specific documents they need to provide, just that they need to show that reduction in gross receipts. And so, the easiest way to do this would be able to give us profit and loss statements that are broken into quarters, and I would break them. I've definitely had some debates with this with CPA firms and stuff, but the way we read the SBA's ruling right now, the SBA specifically refers to a calendar year based quarter. So January, February, March, that's first quarter, and so on. So even if your business operates under a different fiscal year versus a true calendar year, you would still use those calendar based quarters. And so you would just need to provide us a profit and loss statement, for example, from second quarter of 2020 to second quarter 2019. Provide us that profit and loss statement that would show a 25% reduction in your gross receipts. And it can be any quarter. So if you had the biggest drop in third quarter, then give us third quarter. If fourth quarter showed a significant drop, give us fourth quarter. It does say that if you were not in operation for all of 19 and all of 2020, that you could compare 2 quarters in 2020 if you had a drop, as long as you were in business before February 15th of 2020. But we need to be able to adequately show this drop in revenue. So I just would challenge business owners, if you don't typically keep quarterly P&Ls, this is something that you can easily do using templates that are available out there on the internet. You could go to a CPA firm and have them calculate it. If you have accounting software, more than likely your accounting software can provide these types of reports. So it may take some work on your end if you don't typically keep up with a profit and loss statement throughout the year. You may need to go recreate something to be able to show us that information, but we have to be able to prove that 25% reduction in revenue, or gross receipts, as SBA is calling it. We must be able to provide them that documentation during the forgiveness process in order for your loan to get forgiven. So Brian, I think it's important to remember that if you are applying for a loan of $50,000 or less, you will not need to provide us that documentation up front, but you will need to provide it for forgiveness. So that if it's not something that you normally track, you're going to want to get that information together and start tracking it to be able to have it ready for the forgiveness process once you use all of your round 2 PPP funds.
I think that's very helpful, Lane. I think it's also important and a good time for us to talk about the fact that this whole process happened very quickly, as it did a year ago. And so there's information that continues to come out. They're continuing to update that as people walk through the application process, and some businesses are finding that they are potentially excluded. There's some changes that potentially could come. So it's very important that you pay attention to our website. pnfp.com/PPP is where we update all of our information. We'll continue to do webinars as we learn information and want to provide it and pass it along to you all. But please do pay attention to that as we go through the process here. We do have a question from Doug, who is asking about employee headcount. So he's asking about, if you anticipate adding employees, can you include those anticipated new hires in your payroll estimates for your new loan calculations?
Based off of how SBA wants us to calculate payroll, it's 2.5 times the monthly payroll cost during the prior year, from the previous calendar year. So it would not include staffing up. We have had people more concerned on the flip side of if they've had to have reductions, that amount might be too high and they would want to take a lower loan amount. And in those cases, we've told people you can always take a lower, loan amount, or you can take the loan amount and immediately pay a percentage down, so that you wouldn't have to have interest on that piece if it doesn't get forgiven. But we wouldn't be able to use future projected payroll numbers to be able to calculate your loan amount. The way that we have to calculate the loan amount, and SBA actually sent out an email this morning reiterating with that calculation again that it has not changed, that we are to use the same calculation we used in the first round. And the way that we came up with that calculation, or the way that they come up with the loan amount, is based off payroll cost during the year prior to the loan or the previous calendar year. So those are the payroll records we would use. And that's also what's nice about us being able to use those payroll records, is that if you did a first round, you shouldn't need to give us new payroll records. We already have those and would be able to use that same loan amount for this second go round.
I think that's helpful to talk about, Lane, that if you're going to use the same information as the first round, the application process should be fairly simple and straightforward this time, as we have most of your information and documentation from the last round of funding. So there's not a lot that you'll have to provide. I will make one correction, and again, Lane, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a minute ago when we were talking about the 25% revenue reduction, I think you mentioned that for loan amounts of less than $50,000, they would not have to submit documentation. But am I correct in that it's loan amounts less than $150,000?
That's correct. So sorry for that. Thanks, Brian, for catching that. You're right. It's going to be loan applications of 150 or less do not have to provide the documentation, for the reduction on the front end. But I still caution people that you will have to prove it for forgiveness. So it would be great to go ahead and be collecting that information and making sure you can truly show that reduction, so that you're not scrambling once you've used up all the funds and ready to apply for forgiveness.
Yeah, right. That doesn't give them a free pass that they don't ever have to demonstrate it. It's just not required on the front end. We will eventually need that once you go for forgiveness. So Lane, Dennis has a question, and I know we've had lots of questions along the way for Schedule C, self-employed, independent contractors. He says last time in the first round, he was the salary calculation was capped at $20,000. Is that the same for the second round? And I guess additionally, I'll go on and ask the question about documentation for independent contractors and people that are filing for themselves individually. What do they need to know on this round of funding?
Yeah, so we would use their tax returns from 2019 again, and that same cap applies. So they're not giving more than 100,000, and it equates to what a $100,000 salary is over an 8-week time period. So that is still the same cap that we have for this go around versus the first go around. So nothing has changed as far as those calculations go, on how to determine the loan amount. Now, the one caveat there that we do have on PPP round 2, and this is just on the round 2 program, is if you're a restaurant or a hotel, if your business starts with a NAICS code 72, you would be eligible to use a 3.5-time multiple to calculate your loan amount, for your payroll cost. So that is nice that if you are a restaurant or a hotel, they're giving you a little bit more money there, but that is the only change to the initial kind of calculation on how the program was rolled out under round 1 versus round 2.
I think that's great info, Lane, and probably also a great time to address one of the issues that we know we've seen come up several times just in preparation for our clients being able to go in and apply. If you find that your NAICS code is incorrect, that's something that is pulled by our online application system from a third party. And so it's pre-filled in for you. If it's incorrect, please contact your financial advisor. That's something we can work on the back end and correct so that you can go ahead with your application process. But please do notify us, and that's something that we can make a change as we go through the process. Lane, Rachel has a question about COVID-related grants from the state. So state grants that are COVID-related. How does that impact a business's gross receipts? Should they include that in the gross receipt amount when they're trying to calculate that from one quarter to the next?
SBA did not specifically address this. They addressed PPP funds and removing PPP funds, but that would be a question that we would need to ask SBA directly, because there's nothing in their calculation that addresses if they got, state money related to COVID relief that would factor into their gross receipts.
So I know for a lot of people over the course of last year, maybe in an effort to maintain their headcount or even just maintain their employees at their place of business, they did do wage reductions without having to lay people off. How does that impact their application this time? I know you talked a little bit about how you calculate the loan amount, and if they wanted to use what they used for the first draw last year, they're welcome to do that. But it is possible for them to go in and make either an increase to that loan amount or a decrease if they find it necessary by using new calculations. How do they go about doing that?
They would just need to contact their financial advisor and work with them within the application to be able to make those corrections, because our system is automatically going to default to that original loan amount that they were approved for.
So I know we've got one question that I think was part of the information that came out very early on when the second draw was announced about the link to spend the second round of funding. Could you talk a little bit about how they've got the opportunity to use that anywhere between an 8-week and 24-week window?
Yeah, this was a nice change to the program. So SBA better define the covered period. So they are giving you anywhere from 8 to 24 weeks, and anywhere within that window. So if you use the money in 10 weeks, then your covered period is 10 weeks. If you wait and use the money up over the full 24 weeks, then your covered period is 24 weeks. So it gives you the flexibility. If you've gotten your head count back up, and your head count's going to look the best for loan forgiveness at the end of your 10-week period, then that would be your covered period and when you would be able to apply for forgiveness. If you needed to use the full 24 weeks to get your head count back up so that you could use the maximum amount of the money you received, then you've got the flexibility to use that for the full 24 weeks. So we really like that they better define this and gave our clients a little bit more flexibility in how they use those funds. So anywhere between that 8 and 24 week window, but whenever you are done with the money, that would be when you would define the end of your window, your covered period window.
So Lane, Jeff has a question about what's necessary in terms of documentation to upload for his second PPP loan. And his question is, if he's going to use the same payroll from the first loan amount, is there anything that he needs to upload? And I guess the answer would be, it would be dependent upon whether his loan amount is $150,000 or less. The answer would likely, in his case, be no, because we have all that information from the first loan. If it is over $150,000, he will have to demonstrate the 25% loss in revenue from quarter to quarter. Is there anything else Jeff would need to include with his application?
You're spot on, Brian. So for our clients that are applying for a loan amount that's going to be $150,000 or less, the only thing you would need to do would actually be going into our PPP portal and completing that new PPP application. So there are some things that you must attest to as an owner. One of them being that 25% reduction in revenue. And then you must attest so you've also used all of the funds from your original PPP loan. So So that would be really all you would need to do, and then the system will populate and generate the new loan documents for you for your new PPP loan. If you're over 150,000, then we do need to go ahead and collect that information showing your 25% reduction in gross receipts. And so whatever way that you feel you can best document that from your company, if you want to send those over to us, we'd be happy to review them and make sure that they meet the requirement. And then that's what you would upload into the system to be able to show your 25% reduction in gross receipts. But you should not need to send us any new payroll documentation.
I think that's helpful, Lane. And I think after reading through some of these questions, and Joe actually just sent me a message, I think a lot of people are getting the message back from us once they submit the application that we're asking for additional documentation, even though they're going to use the same calculation from the first round. And we're aware of that issue. They don't need to do anything right now. You've completed your application. It's been submitted. And we're aware of that glitch in the message that goes out, and we're working to correct that. But if you're using the same loan amount from the first time, we've got all that documentation. And if you've verified everything on the application and submitted that, then you're in good shape. And your financial advisor will reach out to you if there's additional documentation that is needed. So we're sorry for the confusion with the auto response email requiring you to upload documents. But right now, if you're using the same loan amount from the first round, we've got your information. There's nothing necessary for you to upload on the next round.
Yeah, Brian, I think it's just important for everyone to remember this is day one. We probably will have some hiccups with our system. SBA will be getting us some information probably on some issues that they're having on their end, just like we did in the last round. So we just ask everybody to be patient with us as we wade through this new PPP round 2 process.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like last time, we're going to do our very best to make sure we take care of our clients, and be here to answer questions and walk you through the entire process. We've got an unbelievable team of people who have worked tirelessly again this time around to set the system up and to prepare everything to walk through it. But until we get some applications going, we just don't know what some of those hiccups are going to be. So we do thank everybody for their patience as we guide them through that. Back to some of the questions on the program and how they do some calculations. Lily asks the question about updating your average monthly payroll. So if you do want to do an update to that number and information, is there a specific pay period that you need to use this time around for the payroll calculation?
So we are going to be using what SBA wanted us to use that first go around, and that would be your payroll from 2019. If you're wanting to lower that amount, you can just let your financial advisor know that, I believe. But I don't think we're going to be able to go in and use a higher amount if you have higher payroll costs in 2020 versus 2019. That's not something that I've seen come out from SBA, but like I said, they did send out a notification first thing this morning. I just briefly glanced at it. I did not read all the pages of it. So there may be some more information in that change to how you calculate payroll that SBA actually sent out first thing this morning.
So, Lane, I know I'm keeping you on your toes with some of these questions, but Doug kind of asked a question in reverse of exactly what you just said. If you're a first-time loan applicant, so if you didn't participate last year in the first draw and this is your first time coming to PPP funding, is it possible that they can use the 2019 payroll even if it's higher than what they demonstrated in 2020?
Yes, so if you're a first round, they are going to be using those 2019 numbers. It's just as if you did apply back under the original program. They have made the same requirement so that you wouldn't, be shorted anything since you didn't apply in that first round. So they can definitely use the 2019 payroll numbers to calculate their PPP loan for the first draw program.
Yeah, and Larry asks a question that I know happened with a lot of our very early applicants in the first round last year, and they utilized their funds in an 8-week payout on the first round. Is it possible or permissible for them to switch to a longer payout in this second draw, or are they required to mirror what they did with the first draw?
No, they don't have to mirror what they did with their first draw in the second draw period. So that that change that SBA made to the covered period, they can truly take anywhere between the 8 to 24 weeks to utilize their funds for this second round.
Yeah, which is a really, really nice feature. Potentially can allow people to use most of their funds for exactly what the program was instituted for, which is maintaining payroll, which is really nice.
Yeah, if you're struggling with some of those 40% costs to kind of get all the documentation together, you're right, Brian. Being able to use it over the 24 weeks really allows for most business owners to use 100% on payroll and never really need to dip into some of those other related costs. But we do know that those other related costs are there and they're available, and that's the reason that SBA built those in, so that if you needed to use the money on some of those costs, you could as well.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's a really important time as we kind of wrap up here to remind people that just like Lane talked about, she got some information this morning. As we receive information from the SBA about the program, we'll put it out on our website as soon as we've had a chance to decipher it and put it in a way that people can actually understand it at pnfp.com/PPP. So we encourage people to continue to check that website for updates. We're going to put links to these webinars out and available there, but also on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/watchpnfp, so that if you want to go back and watch any of this information or watch previous webinars that we've done on the program, those are all available on our YouTube channel. So you can go out and watch that, or even share that with somebody else to be able to watch as you walk through the process. And then also, as Lane talked about just a few minutes ago, the system went live this morning. We know there are some bugs in the system, and we're doing our very best to resolve those very quickly. But we do ask for patience as we walk through that with you and continue to update it. And then if you've got questions directly, we encourage you to reach out to your financial advisor. We've tried to do a very good job of putting some communication together to equip them to be able to help you as you walk through the application. So if you've got a question, reach out directly to your financial advisor and just have a conversation about your specific business as we go through the application process. Well, Lane, it's Tuesday morning and we're live and we're going. I know we both have lots of clients and lots of questions and people that are needing our attention. We'll go ahead and wrap up for now. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with as we move on today?
Yeah, Brian, one of the biggest frustrations that I've heard from clients over the past few weeks since this PPP round 2 was rolled out was the clients that may not fall into being able to show that 25% reduction. And I know that's frustrating, that there are going to be some businesses that are not able to show that and therefore don't qualify for the PPP program. So I'd like to just briefly remind business owners out there that this is just one of the stimulus programs that the government has rolled out to help small businesses. The EIDL program is also still available. It's reopened out there. The EIDL Advance, or the grant piece of that, is back open. So that's another benefit that you can apply for that truly would be, forgiven. It's funds that you don't have to repay back. The EIDL loan program you do have to pay back, but that's at a very low interest rate over a really long amortization. So it's another good benefit that if your business is truly struggling and needs working capital, that's what the EIDL program is there to provide. It provides up to 6 months of working capital expenses for small business owners. There were also some enhancements that SBA did to their regular SBA lending programs. So those are the SBA 7A loan program and the 504 loan program. So they're actually waiving the fees, the SBA guarantee fees, which are usually very expensive on those programs. They're waiving those through the end of September this year, and potentially making up to 6 months of loan payments for those new loans. So there's definitely programs that are out there that are available in addition to PPP if for some reason your business does not fall into that caveat of proving the 25% reduction in gross receipts. So just wanted to give that as a little plug and a reminder that PPP is not the one and only program available out there for small businesses that are suffering from COVID right now and might need a little extra relief.
Well, Lane, you are such a valuable asset, and we're so thankful that you spent some time with us this morning to answer questions and to give us the latest update. We do have another webinar scheduled for Thursday afternoon. That's scheduled for 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern time. So we encourage everybody to tune back in then to ask us questions that you might have about the process and tune in for additional updates. And we'll one last time plug the website, pnfp.com/PPP. That's where you can find all the information about first draws and second draws and any of the information that you might need as you walk through the process. So we are thankful that you spent a little bit of time with us this morning. We hope it's been helpful, and we look forward to walking with you through the process. Thanks for being with us.